Okay, I think I pressed the button. Yeah, I think it's recorded.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about GT. It's a package. It's been around for a little while, and it's getting better than it used to be. So the basic idea is that you have, table data, you make a GT object, and eventually you get a GT table, which you can use inside R Markdown. You can take the HTML and run. You can do RTF files, which work in Word. And you can also do LaTeX, which is sort of minimally supported at this point. So yeah. So the whole idea is you make something called, we have data tables, but when we're using GT, we're making display tables. Basically, they're like sort of like tables that you'd see in print or you see on web pages. So we're going to call them display tables to avoid some confusion with, just regular data tables you see in R or everywhere else. And it has interface where you just use functions, and it will allow you to sort of fine-tune the final appearance, even like to this maniacal level. You can like change little aspects of it. But the easy stuff is easy, and the more advanced stuff is possible. That's the idea here. And as I said, you can do R Markdown. You can have these tables appear in R Markdown, or they can be inside Shiny applications as well. And the cool thing is you can actually program with the GT and make tables as even output objects in packages. So you can like have any package you make, you can have it display a GT table for people if they want it. Okay, so how do you do this? Well, you start with the table data. So you put your data in a form that's reasonably close to how you want your table to look. So we have tons of tools to make this possible. We can use dplyr, use tidyr, other great packages, and just get your table into shape. Then you sort of introduce it into GT, and then right there is where you can add table components, do all sorts of things. I'll show you these things a little bit later, but you can group rows together, add spanner labels, footnotes, format cells, add styles. It's great. And you can also always preview it inside the viewer in RStudio. Or if you don't use RStudio, you can view it outside of that too. That's fine. And as I said before, you can output the table to HTML. You can save an image if you want. If you want to, put it in an email or something like that. You can do RTF from LaTeX. There's lots of flexibility when you have your table generated. Okay, here's an example of a table that's made in GT, and it basically has cars in it. And I want to show you some of the useful features of a table, and it's everything that GT can offer you. So a table header, it's basically just a title and a subtitle if you want it. It's quite nice. You can put it to left or right or middle. By default, it's in the middle. It's quite nice. You can have something called row labels, along with row grouping. You see there's these labels are the cars, and then like the groups are like the different countries where the cars are from. Column labels, that's pretty obvious, but you can rename them, style them, and even have like these spanning column labels, which is quite nice. You just say which columns you want them over, and they would appear. Data, of course, the data should be the biggest part usually. And we can have all sorts of formatting. As you can see here, we have like, currency formatting. We have, formatting with line breaks. We can merge columns together to get these nice effects where we combine text together. You can even have like markdown formatting, so we can have italics. So it's, change the size of things. So data formatting is a huge thing in GT. We want to make sure that you can like get your numbers or your, all your words in the right format. And footnotes. Super important as well. As you can see here, we have a footnote number 2 there and 1 here, and they all appear here in the footnotes section. And the best thing about it is they all are in the right order. It doesn't matter how you declare footnotes, what order you choose. It'll get the numbering right, and even if you have multiple footnotes, it'll put 1, 2, 3 together, and you'll never get duplicates. So basically, a lot of like consideration was put into like getting nice footnotes, so you don't have to manually sort of mess around with that stuff. Source notes. Basically, these are like non-numbered notes at the bottom. So you can just say general things about the table. We just call this source note because it talks about the source, and it's not, not really a footnote. Okay, and as I mentioned before, the ordering must always be correct. The package ensures that this one is indeed number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. It gets in the right order, puts notes in, and you can format that in Markdown to get like, things like bold text or whatever styling you need. And the way it does it is it just indexes all the different locations. So each time we have a cell, we call the location, and we just number it from like left to right, top to bottom. And that way internally the package will understand, okay, this is first, this is second, that's third. Okay, so because we're dealing with tables and you want to program with tables, we have to talk about different parts of tables. So we give them names. So it formalizes different parts of the table. Once you get the names down, it's not that hard to sort of use the API pretty quickly and more intuitively. But we just have to get some terminology down. So the most basic form of a GT table is it has column labels, a table body, and we just call these cells. You know, nothing, it's not too crazy. It's pretty much what you know. This is kind of new though. Like there's a section here, it's reserved for row labels. And this thing in the corner, which could be there or not be there, it could refer to the columns, it could refer to the rows or both. We call that a stub head label. And this is like the stub head area. And this is a stub. So basically it's kind of like a place for like labels of rows. And you know, we see that as row names in R, right? We have empty cars, it has row names. This effectively acts the same way, although we can use it for different things too. Like if you have summaries, we can use summary labels and then, you know, understand, you know, what the summaries mean. So a row group is essentially a name for a group of rows, and it usually appears by just running across. So like any cells to the right are not there. You'll see this later on, and you've probably seen it before as well. But rows can be grouped, and they can have labels. And we can add, in the GT API, we can add summary rows to groups, or we can add summary rows that refer to all the rows or cells in a table. And we call that a grand summary. Okay, so in this stub now we have a summary label and we have summary cells in the table body. Okay, and title and subtitle, if you want it, you can have it. It's optional. And footnotes and source notes as annotations in the footer section. Again, they're optional. Most of the stuff is optional except for like, you know, the table body itself. You can even get rid of like the column labels if you don't want them. But by default, you get column labels and cells. Okay, and spanner column labels, these are just spanner sections. They appear over whichever column labels you want. You can have as many as you want. It's pretty flexible. You can have over some cells and not others. You can do crazy things like repeat them and have gaps. So it's pretty flexible in that way. And you can style that cell as well and add footnotes and things like that. Okay, so that's all the parts of a table. I know it's kind of a lot to you know, take in at once, but once you get that down, then you have a way of describing where you want certain things, where you want styles, where you want footnotes, because a lot of the functions will use like the names. Okay, let's learn how to use GT. I'll show you like quickly a bunch of functions, how it styles the table, and then we'll get out of like this presentation, we'll go right into RStudio, and I'll show you tons of demos. It'll be so cool. Okay, I went a little crazy with GT. I put in tons of like data sets. I put 6 of them because it's great to have like, you know, like data to, you know, like, you know, make examples with. So it comes with 6 example data sets. They have various sizes and subject matter. They could, you know, we have examples at that site. So if you go to gt.rstudio.com, there's like tons of documentation in there. There's like, you know, like documentation for each of the functions, plus a bunch of articles as well. So we're going to do a few examples with the smallest data set, Exhibit. It's just a great data set for small examples. It's only like 8 rows by 9 columns. It has lots of different data in it and it has missing values. So it's great for little examples. It fits on a page. It's quite nice. Okay, so if we just take Exhibit and use the pipe in the GT, this is the entry point to GT, the GT function. If you just pipe in the GT, you get this table. You know, pretty cool. You know, it's an HTML table. It's got all the stuff in it. It's all formatted sort of like in a very basic way. But, you know, it's pretty good. You didn't do much to get that. Okay, tab header. That's how you get the title. And you can add a subtitle if you want it, but we didn't put it there. But here we just piped, you know, we're always going to do this. We're going to do Exhibit to GT and then some other functions beyond that. So tab header, you put in a title. We use this MD helper to specify that, yeah, this is Markdown. We put 2 asterisks on each side of GT so it gets bold. And yeah, so we get a title now. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to, you know, add the header, same title. We're going to add another pipe and add a source node. it's going to be super simple, just for the sake of example. From GT, it just appears at the bottom. So with just a few functions, we now have a table, title, and a source node. That's tab source node. Okay, formatters. So you got a column of data, you want to format it. You want to make your numbers look nice. You want to do all sorts of things. So format number, you just have numbers. You want to change the decimal places. You just want 2 decimal places. So you can do that. So anything that's not null will now have 2 decimal places. You don't get that crazy scientific notation that we saw before on these large numbers. It's nicely formatted, it's dependable. It's really hard to do in R, actually, to format things like this. I don't know why, it just is. But if you just do this, we're guaranteed it's just 2 decimal points, even if there's no values there, just 0, 0. Scientific notation, we can do that. It's really great for, really large and really small numbers together, or, just huge numbers. You don't want to write all that stuff out. So yeah, it could do that. It does that. It doesn't do it for the small numbers because having times 10 to the, like to not, like to 0 is, a little silly. You just don't do that. So, it thinks about that. It doesn't do that sort of thing. And 0 will just be 0. It won't, be 0 times 10 to the, it'll do it right. So that's what this is doing. Format scientific. You just specify the column and it just does it. Another cool thing, and this is with all the formatter functions, is you have a rows argument. And you can add an expression and it'll just format those rows, like based on that expression. So it says right here, where the number is greater than 10 to the 3, which is above 1,000, that would be these numbers. So it formats those in scientific notation, and these ones it doesn't format at all. Okay, so rows. Formatting currency. So you may have a column. There's one here just called currency. So it's just begging to be formatted as currency. So I just chose euros. I just used a 3-letter country code. 3-letter currency code. And it knows, like it gives you the right glyph. It even does things like it knows the right number of decimal places. Did you know that some currencies have like 3 or 4, like beyond the decimal point? It's pretty wild, but GT knows about that. It has a helper function here, well, an info function. You just type that in, it'll give you a table of all the currencies that GT knows, and it's like 200 currencies. They'll give you examples in that table. It's really nice. Okay, format date. Formatting dates, it's a real pain. So I just created some functions like format date, format time, format date time. You just give it a style number. I mean, you can also give it like something more complex, but just refer to info date style. It'll give you like all the different styling numbers, like codes, and you can just style it the way you want, like really simply. So you can do things like this. You can make it, just like the year. Sometimes you can do that. It's pretty wild. The only condition is you have this in ISO 8601 notation, basically this notation, and then you'll be fine. Okay, missing values. So you saw a bunch of NAs in the previous table. You can replace that with something else. By default, it gives you like these M dashes. They might look fine. You just pass an empty string if you really want these empty. But the idea is that if you just use format missing and scan across all the columns, that's what this everything does. It'll just replace it with the default replacement value. So you don't have to see NAs. Makes it a bit nicer to see. Okay. So you can do modifications on entire columns. So you can do alignment. So you want to align values to the right. By default, like GT will align certain columns values for you, in the most natural way. But say you want your text to go to the right, not flowing, left aligned. You can do that right here. You just choose char, factor, align right, and there you go. You can hide columns. Say you don't want so date and time, or anything that matches date and time. It's like just 3 columns there that match that regex, date, time, and daytime. It'll just hide them. They were here in the middle. Now they're gone. I mean, why would you even do that? Well, why include them in the first place? Say you want to use different columns to do some work on some other column, right? Like maybe that row expression. You want to say, oh yeah, I'll format these based on some values in the row just across. But I don't want to show that row in the end, like that one I just used to format this other column. So we just hide them. Yeah. cool thing about hiding is even if you have like things like footnotes in here, it'll renumber everything. So like you don't have to like look at gaps in footnotes. It knows about what's actually going to be displayed in terms of footnoting and numbering the glyphs. Okay, column merging. So you got two columns. You want to mash them together into like one column, and you have some sort of pattern which governs like how it's actually sort of put together. So the pattern here is like column 1, column 2. This is column 1, column 2. So the curly braces in the first column. These are literals, like these parentheses. So they appear right here. So basically, we're just putting together two columns, ditching the second one. It's basically hiding that one, and that's it. I mean, you can keep that one. There's a function to like keep extra columns, but usually when you're merging, you want to get rid of some excess columns. So we're just putting them together. Okay, there's like a ton of functions in GD. It's crazy, like over 100. It's nuts, and they have different categories. Create table. I didn't go through much of them at all. But again, gt.rstudio.com is your friend. There's a reference there. There's even like a button we can press. It'll take you to RStudio Cloud. And you can try the examples on like RStudio Cloud. You don't have to install it. But the great thing is all the examples are there in different R Markdown documents. You just run them and play around with them. And you always get the latest version. You can mess around on RStudio Cloud. And it's a great way to try things out. Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah.
When you were merging columns,
Yeah.
it looked like it took the first column as the name. So
yes.
Is there a way to? Does it always take the first column as the name, or?
Yeah, the first one you put here is the column it's going to merge onto. So it'd be number 1. This will be number 2. You can change the name of the columns though.
Okay.
And that's usually what you do. Like, later on, you never want to keep these. You'll use a function called calls label, I believe it is, and you can relabel these in nice styles, like with markdown and line breaks. You can do really cool things. But yeah, usually you don't want to keep that. It's usually doesn't mean the same thing anymore when you do that. Good question. So I'm going to go to RStudio presentations. I'm going to make this big because right now it's small. How are we doing for time here? Oh, yeah, we got some time. Okay. I'm not going to take too much time, but I really just want to run you through things to prove that this works. And, that's nice. Okay, so I'm going to load up GT and even tidyverse because it's got some useful functions for, like reshaping your table. And these are all like linked. I believe there's links for this, right, Derek? Somewhere in Meetup?
Yes, there's under the comment for the Meetup, there's a link for all of the examples, and I'll also throw it in the comments in this chat.
Sweet. Yeah, because if you get that, you'll get all these files and you can just run them, and they work, and it's quite nice. So basically what I've done here is I wrote a little bit of stuff. It's an R Markdown document. There's like 4 of them. I wrote a little bit of text. So if you knit it, it just shows you some text and it shows you the examples. I run through a few of the functions here. The most important one first is GT, where you create a GT table object. So let me show you how it works. I'm sometimes going to use the console, which is right here, because it appears differently in the console than it does below. It'll just be nicer to scroll on the side. So I'm going to show you that. So I'm going to show you Zibble in the console right here. Okay, so that's basically the table we want to turn into a GT table. So let's run that over here again in the console. Okay, so I'm going to stretch this a little bit. So this is our GT table. It's not bad. That's, something you can use. But you can do more than that. You can do things like inside the GT function, you can specify that the column row serves as row names. So let me show you how that looks. Okay, so now that column, which was row, thrown over here into the stub. It doesn't have the column label anymore. It's basically the stub head, which doesn't have a label by default. So basically we now have like a stub, and it's filled with whatever was in a row column before. We can go a step further and say this group column, we see group A, group B. We can specify that as being groups right at the beginning. So now we have group A, group B. These are the rows in that group, and these are the rows in that other group. And if you have if they're not together, it'll just sort of rearrange it for you, like in the right order. So you don't have to worry too much about that sort of thing. Okay, so Yeah, so this sort of proves it to you. Say we have it in a weird order right here. So
Very quick question.
So now it's all, yeah.
So for the grouping, if you want to group by 2 columns, would you just include it in that group name column, like both the columns?
No, you can't do it that way. You know what you do in that case? You use grouped data. So you say, yeah, just go dplyr group by. So GT knows about group data, right? So you just say example, and then give the 2 groups. I don't have a good example. Let's try date and time. It'll just make 1 column groups. Date and time, and I'll pass it to GT. And see, now we have like this and that together. These are all the one row groups. It's a terrible example, but if you have a better example, which, you know, like the groups are,
sure,
you know, like not 1 row each,
okay,
it'll be much nicer. But you can pass in group data with as many groups as you want. You just can't do it through this simple interface. You have to do it beforehand. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, basically what I'm saying here is you can like have jumbled up like rows like this. And then if you do pass it into GT, it'll put the groups together. They'll be in a different order, but it'll be in the order that they appeared, right? But at least, you know, like they'll go into the right groups is what I'm saying. I mean, it's kind of your responsibility to arrange things a bit beforehand too. You can also do other things like empty cars, see how it has, this is kind of rare these days. You know, have like a data frame with row names. You can take those row names and put them in the stub. I mean, there's allowance for that. It's going to be a rare thing, but it knows about that sort of thing. Another cool thing is GT preview. So you have like a big data set. It's not too big. GT cars is not huge. It's one of the data sets included in GT. But you just want to see a little bit of it. So here we're selecting just 3 columns. We're using GT preview. And you see the top and just the last row. I mean, you can also do a thing where you say bottom n is like, you know, 6 instead, or 5 to make it even. There you go. You can see the top and bottom. It's good for giant data sets. You just want to sort of like get a quick preview of it. And there's options too. You want to see row numbers, you know, things like that. There's all sorts of things you can do to make it a bit nicer. Okay, one thing I want to show you is this GT save function. What it allows you to do is you got a GT object right here. I mean, I'm not going to run the code. Maybe I could, but basically I just want to show it to you. What you provide here is like the GT table object, which you made with GT. Put it in the GT save and just give it a file name. And based on the ending, this .html, it'll produce an HTML file. If you provide RTF as an ending, it'll make an RTF file. PDF will be the same thing. It'll make a LaTeX PDF file. So that's how that works. But I'm not going to show it to you because I'm running a little bit low on time, and I want to show you this other stuff, which is really cool. I mean, it gets to like really cool, awesome sort of like final demo. Okay, spanners. So what you do there is you take a table. There, it's a table. We want to select just a few things. We'll make a small version of GT cars. Okay, and I'll show it to you in here as well, just so you get both views. Okay, it's only eight rows. Okay, so let's have a look at it down here as well. So we're starting it that way. So what you want to do now is you want to put a spanner called performance above all these different columns. So we're just going to run the tab spanner after using GT. Just need a label, you just need the columns, you can run it like that. And if you want Markdown, it's as easy as just hitting MD around this. And you can do things like this. Now you have performance in bold. Okay, you can also do crazy things with you know, tidy select. If you know dplyr, you probably have seen things like starts with. You know, we have quite a few functions here. I mean, it's not functions, columns that have the same sort of like beginnings, right? So you can, I don't know if this makes it shorter, but you can do things like this, and you can sort of use tie select to sort of, you know, name the columns. It gives you the same result. It's probably better if you have like, you know, like more columns that start with something and you have a bigger table. You can do things like, this is kind of cool. If you have a table that's like this, So now HP is at the beginning. And you want to put a spanner above, something that includes HP, but it's away from the rest of the columns. What will happen? Basically what will happen is it will be gathered up right there at the location of the first instance of that, column group, you can say. Reason being is, you don't want performance to be there twice. Although you can do that if you want it. In some cases, that's actually not a bad idea for repeating spanners. So you have this option called gather. By default, it's true. We can set it to false, and it'll do this splitting up now. It's also only useful in certain circumstances, but there are use cases. Okay, tab header, we've seen that before. I'll show you that quickly. We're basically just putting a title and optionally a subtitle. And there we go. We just made a small version of this table, GT cars, and did this. Source note, I'll show you that quickly just to prove that you can do that. It's right at the bottom here. Oh, but there's a mistake on purpose. So we have some markdown text here, but we didn't actually specify MD. I mean, by default, it doesn't presume that you have markdown text, but you can do this. Oops, sorry. And then run it, and we should have it converted to HTML right now. Okay, footnotes. When you're dealing with things like footnotes or styles, you have to target things, to let GT know, where you want the footnote, essentially. So you have a whole selection of these cells underscore functions. Basically, they're used for targeting. So we can target, the title, the stub head label, column spanners, column labels, row groups, the body cells, summary, grand summary, stuff like that. So let me show you that right here. So we have example going to GT. It looks just like this when you start off. And we want a footnote that has a text. This is a factor column. We want on the label here, factor. So we do cells, column labels, and it's got only one argument, which is the column name. So we do that. And there it is. Just a bit of a note. It starts off with numbers, like that's a default, but you can have things like letters as well. You can change that in a large function called tab options. And you can change it. So this could be letters, capital letters, or any series that you specify. So you want like star and the daggers. You can do that as well. Okay, tab style kind of operates in the same way. That you need a location, but also has these other functions here, which you can use to specify the styles. So in this one right here, we are taking this table, which is a narrow table with just 2 columns, num and currency. And we're saying, oh yeah, the text is gotta be in this font, Times New Roman, and it's gonna be all the cells in the body. So it's gonna be all these right here, because we're not specifying columns or rows, we just want all of them. So let's see. And there you go. See, what's changed now is that these are now in the Times New Roman font. Right there. You can do the same thing for the columns if you want, like the column labels. And nice thing about this is that with cell text, you can specify a better font than what you have in your system. You can actually use a Google font, and there's a bunch. There's over 1,000 of those. A really nice one is IBM Plex Sans. Let's use that, and you can there's an argument for the weight in there as well. So it's pretty cool. You can do that. And if you want to change the weight to like something super bold, I think 800 will make it even bolder. And if you want it like super thin, I think there's like 200. So that's how you selectively change like the font, tab style. So we have a data set called SP500. It's pretty huge. It's got like historical SP500 data going back to 1950 for each day. So we can take that. We could do a little bit of work on it so that we filter so it's not so huge. Now it's only going to be like 11 rows. We'll put that into GT. I'm going to do this sort of progressively so you can see every step here. There is in GT just by introducing it to GT. And we want to do 2 tab styles. In one case, we want to fill some cells in the body to be light green if the closing value was higher than the opening. So basically a green day, or we want it to be like just like red color if it's like a red day in terms of like how it performed. So let's actually run this whole thing. And essentially we're just using the rows. So we're just saying open, close, open greater than close, or close greater than open to specify which rows. And there it is. It doesn't look that great in terms of color choices, but a cool thing that GT does is if the color is too dark, it'll reverse the text for you. So you get some good contrast. So you don't have to ask for that. It just sort of does that. Of course, you can change it later if you don't like that, but it tries to do things which are sensible. Tab options. So this is just a massive function which has dozens upon dozens of different options. You can globally change the table. I'm not going to go through much of that, obviously, because it's so huge. But one thing we can do here is, do we even have that? Tab options, where are we? Oh, I see, it's in the next one right here. Okay, so we're going to create a table and then like use some options to change it. Let me show you the starting table. So, it took a bit of code. We did things like, we added the header, styled some, formatted some columns, added a few footnotes. That was basically it. That's our table. But now we want to do things like, change the width here. So let's make the table width 100%. That means it'll span across the entire container. So it'll stretch. So we can do pixels, of course. We do any sort of CSS length unit will work here. So we can modify a table background color. This is one of the options, table background color. We can just choose a color. Let's try that out. There we go. So we're back to the original size, but the background color is changed to light cyan. So here's the thing I was talking about, the footnotes. We can change the footnote marks to letters instead of numbers. So there, instead of 1, it's A, here's B, repeat a few times. And then there should be, that's it actually, yeah, there's no C. We can make a table more condensed by changing the padding of the data rows with, data row padding. So let's have a look at that. There you go. In case, it's a bit too tall, we can sort of like scrunch it down a bit. There's more too, like, those things like we can make the headings a bit smaller. Tons and tons of options, because having options is good. So I wanted to show you that just to, sort of introduce you to the features. Formatting, I want to see how much time we have left. Okay, we have a bit of time.
Yeah,
okay.
about 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll get it done before then, and then plenty of time for questions. Formatting, basically it's column-wise. You want to do numbers. We have tons of options here. I just showed you before decimals and the rows argument. You even do things like have significant digits, choose to drop the trailing zeros, and even drop the trailing decimal mark if there's no zeros. Yeah, lots of things you do. Even for different locales, you can add a locale, or you can switch the separating marks and the decimal marks to be reversed, like in European countries. I think they have that. So let's try that out. Let's do a few things here. So I'll take this. Let me show you some of the features here. So by default, it does 2 decimal places. Let's try a locale. I don't know. This is France, right? So now basically this has become like a space, and like the decimal points become a comma. And we can change it to Germany. They have the dot there. I think it's different in Austria. Nope, got it wrong. Well, that's all I know. We won't do any more of that. But basically, you have lots of locales. I think there's up to 800 locales if you know the actual codes. And there's a function to get the locales too. I think it's like info locales. If I just type that in, it's a pretty huge table, but it'll appear here, and it'll show you every single locale that's available. Okay, so that's for numbers. You can use separators or not. I won't really show you that because I do want to get through this to the final demo. But yeah, here's locales right here. If you know these codes, you just put them in where the locale is, and it gives you a little preview how a number is sort of like formatted with this. Okay, I'm gonna show you something else. You could do things like, this is a pretty insane treatment of country pops. It's one of the data sets in GT. We can make it so it looks like this. And then we could make these and put these into the stub. So that's how that looks. These are 3-letter country codes, and these are the years. And these numbers are huge, not great to look at, a little hard to understand. We can make these much nicer. We can actually have an option called suffixing equals true. And if we do that, we get like numbers like this, in terms of millions, billions, things like that. And it's to 2 decimal places. You can change that as well. So that's what this does. And there's even more you can do here. You can supply your own vector to, choose what these are, these different labels. Yeah, currencies, I'll show you that really quickly just to prove that, yeah, currencies can be selected differently. So if we do this, here we go. If I know my currencies, I know this one's yen, that. And then, it cuts it off because it knows that you don't really have anything trailing that. And that's all I'll have at the top of my head. So you may have some tables which are sort of text heavy. We have a bunch of text like that. Then we'll make a table like this. Looks like that. Doesn't look too great to look at. Maybe if it's over here, it looks a bit better. Actually, no, it's not that. But you pass that into GT, and it just treats it as unstyled text like this. If you use a function called format markdown, you could change that to HTML. That's a lot nicer. And links work, things like that. So it's quite useful. You see in format missing. I don't want to show it to you again. I think I'll just go to the final demo, which will wrap things up. And the final demo is a little bit insane, to say the least. It uses a lot of packages. But I just kind of want to, just get your imagination going in and show you where you can go with this sort of thing. So we can have, things like SVG icons. Looks like this. That's the sun, globe, clock. That's going in the table. We can also specify a palette. So this package called palette here has tons of palettes. We can just grab that as a character vector. We'll use that in GT. We're going to just set one thing here. And we have this table called SCA. It's short for solar zenith angles. And it's a massive table, so we're going to make that kind of smaller so it fits on, basically like one screen full. That's how the table looks, unstyled. Okay, it's pretty good. I mean, it tells you, different time of the day, what the angle of the sun is during different months at different times. We want to make that better. We want to make this like an awesome table. So we're going to do all this stuff, which is insane. I'll go through it later if we have time, but it's just a lot of stuff. But it's going to be an awesome looking table in the end. I just know this. Okay, so I'm going to run this. Here's a table. We're using all sorts of functions, like one called data color, which will color based on certain values in your table. We're styling, the columns, adding, a column spanner, mostly for styling in this case. There's the stub head label, title, subtitle. These are the SVG icons. And here's the source node. And it did things like, reverse the color of text because it got a bit too dark here. So yeah, I think that's it. I mean, that's all I can pack into 40 minutes. I don't want to overwhelm, but I just want to say there's lots you can do. I would try it if I were you. Oh, and other packages that do things. Okay, so this package does not do Word right now. I mean, it's something I want to get to, but it's going to be a while before I get to that. So you can use other packages like Flex Table is really awesome if you want Word output. And if you have things like model results, like things you would put in Broom, there's another package called GT Summary, which uses GT, and it will actually display that model output really nicely. So you got a linear model. Say you got what else you got? Like a survival model. You can display that in a table using GT Summary. So yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, I'll answer them all. Here, drink some water too.
Can you, I think where you use that image, so can you also have images as within the body cells?
You can, yeah. And I wish I had an example here, but I don't. But there's a function called, I just remember it. Well, this is a good reason to go to the website, I guess. 1 second here. I believe I have it right here. I will direct you to the right spot. It's gonna be worth the wait. Okay, so we go to the site. The site is right here, gt.rstudio.com. Reference, and I believe it's in this image part, image addition functions. So you can have like image from the web, an image that you have locally, or a ggplot. And I'll show you an example here. Right here. So here's like an example, like output, and here's the code to generate that. Right there.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can do that. It's useful a lot of times.
And I think you already showed an example. So if we wanted links, we'll just have it in Markdown and use kind of the link within Markdown.
Yeah, that's not a bad way. There's more functions if you want to just change a cell entirely. There's a function called text transform, and basically use you just specify your table. You give it a location. You usually want cells body. Say you want 1, 1. It's not going to work here because I don't have it hooked up to the table. But then you can use a function here, and you might say something like, I want it to be this. Or you can take X, which is what's currently in the cell, and modify it. You can do something like, A0X, more text, that sort of thing. Or you can just put a link there, just style it, use it as like, HTML link, just put it right in there as a tag. But a good way to start is just, like have that in the table coming in. Then you can just use format markdown. Yeah.
There were a couple of functions where I didn't quite recognize them. One was one's the MD function.
Yeah.
I'm looking here. There's a Google font function. Are those functions a part of the GT package? Or are they coming from somewhere else?
Yeah, they come in from GT.
Okay.
I put those in, and because originally I thought like, everything should just be like, markdown, inferred as markdown, but it's actually not a good thing to do because like for security, it's actually really bad, right? You may have text coming in from a place that you don't know where the text is, and may create markdown, which is malicious. So you have to opt into like this, like text to HTML conversion yourself. So we provide that in the package. All it does is specify that, yeah, this text should be, it is markdown and it should be transformed, just so people don't sneak in, bad things like. Yeah, but it's in this package, and I used it in a few other packages too because I thought it was a pretty good idea. I think I used it in Blastula as well, and it's not a bad idea, just to mark it as as being as markdown code that should be transformed. And what was the other one you mentioned?
The Google font. I think
Google font. Yeah, that's a new one actually. Yeah, like that just came in like I don't know, like late last year. And I thought it was such a good idea because, like, tables, when you see them online, they have like nice fonts, and to just use the system font or be at the mercy of whatever font is the CSS for the document you're putting your table in is kind of like not great. So it gives you options to use tons of font choices from Google, and they're free. So
that makes me wonder because the Google font I would assume is an HTML based font.
Yeah.
And with GT, you can create tables in like LaTeX and rich text format. Now, one of my other questions is, what does a table even look like in RTF? Because I never look at, like, I don't hardly ever open up documents in RTF, but
it doesn't look great.
I also want to know, like, how does that font translate over to LaTeX and RTF?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't translate to RTF.
Well,
not rich enough text.
Yeah, well, RTF right now, it'll take any system font you specify. For Google Fonts, it'll just basically ignore it. Because in RTF, you can specify which font you want, but it has to be on your system. So a future bit of work might be like, if you do specify a Google font and you want RTF or LaTeX, it will download the font for you and embed it and use it that way. But I haven't gone that far because that's a sort of monumental task. Sort of, I don't know, maybe it's easy, but I haven't, I mean, it's easy to know that it's missing, but it's hard to imagine like what it's going to look like in terms of code that's required for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
Imagine
definitely
on different systems, you'd want to download it to different places, and
yeah. You get
errors
into like
and
sort of
stuff.
like this temporary font management, right? Where you may have to download a copy. Are you going to keep that font in your system? Then you have to deal with like like your system fonts. It gets into a whole sort of like like set of things you got to do. You get suckered into essentially. Google Fonts is quite nice though. HTML, you don't get it. You just like say I want it, and it gets transmitted to you. You just have to use some CSS.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
This is an amazing volume of features you've incorporated within this package. Are you thinking about adding, let's say, interactive features? Let's say like the DT package has, like sorting or searching to this package. Is that on the roadmap?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's just we meant to get there sooner actually, and we just discovered that there's so many like things to do in the static case which are totally unsolved yet. Eventually, want to get there though. Having things like pagination, having things like search are like huge things, especially for larger tables. But since we don't even have that yet, I've been sort of doubling down on like making smaller tables that you wouldn't want to have as functionality in the first place. Make those better. So I've been doing things like those that those other packages don't do. Like, well, they sort of do, but they're a bit of a pain to implement, like footnotes, more styling, and more of a declarative interface. So you could just like do easier things with less typing. But certainly we want to get there, especially if you want to use this in Shiny. Right now, you can probably do that in Shiny. It'll be like a separate sort of component for that. But it'd be nice to have, if batteries included, you just like use that functionality in it. You have to like create it yourself, essentially. So yeah, essentially it's on the roadmap, but I'm not sure if it'll be this year because right now it's basically just me working on the package, and I've got a backlog of like, I don't know, either 150 or 200 issues. I stopped counting. And a lot of them are pretty big ones. Like some of them are like minor bugs, and some of them are just like features that I should have included on the first pass. But yeah, it'll be a while.
How can we contribute, or how can we help?
Yeah, use the package and let me know what's needed. That's a huge thing. Sometimes it helps in prioritizing what needs to be done first, because I do have milestones for this package. If you look inside, I don't see it here. Go back a bit on the repo itself. How do I go back? Is it here? Yeah. Okay. Good.
In another tab. There you go.
Yeah. So in the repo, 250 issues. Oh my god. Yeah. So I actually don't mind these issues. I think they're great. We need them. We need to know what people need. Essentially, is the thing that would help a lot. PRs are not really useful because I even have a backlog of that. Basically, just voting on what you need, and then I'll triage things a bit more effectively. I'll put things into the right milestones, and these will get done as long as I know what to put in first. Right now, it's so few people like commenting on issues that it's a bit like almost like a random pick as to what I work on first. It's like a feeling more than like urgency. So yeah, let me know what you need, and that would help a lot. Either bugs or features, I'll take both.
Yeah, I'm just amazed that you developed this package pretty much on your own. This is insane.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of work. It's basically all of like 2018 and 2019. But it came together nicely once we had like the sort of beginnings, like the function names was kind of not the names, but like like how to sort of split functions, and like basically how to how to organize the API was the big thing. Once we got some organization down, it was pretty easy to extend. We need to like, approach it from like the end user sort of standpoint. What would be easiest to use, and we'll make those functions.
Actually, one more question, and maybe this may be outside the scope of the GT package, but maybe it's a more just a R markdown thing. Is there a way to lay two tables side by side?
You could. So what you would have to do, GT doesn't make that available in like, doesn't make that easy like in one object. So what you have to do is you have to use a function called, I'll go back to this function reference because that's the best way, is as raw HTML. I'll just search for it because this page is huge. Okay. So yeah, as raw HTML, get the HTML content of a GT table. And what you would do is you do that twice and then put that content into two different divs. And you can do that nicely with HTML tools as well, right? You may have a container div, you may have two inner divs, and then inside those inner divs, you would probably want to, put the table content in there. And then like, any number of Stack Overflow or, CSS tricks articles will show you how to like, put two divs together and to, size them the right way. Put them inside Flexbox, that probably is the easiest way. And just a note that this function is getting better soon. It'll have better export of both the CSS and all the table stuff inside one div. So it's more self-contained. And you can do things like, use, you can go really, really far. You can either use regex to replace certain style attributes in the div that's given to you, or you can use things like XML2, or you can use HTML tools and override them. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but basically you want to grab, you have to do a sort of do it yourself, essentially, to arrange that stuff.
Cool, thanks.
Piggybacking on the organization of the API, I know you guys had some functions in there, the info functions, where you're listing out. I really like the idea of saying, there's a lot of stuff in the palettes, and you may not be familiar with a color palette, but here is what they all look like, and you can pick which one. Or the currency, that kind of thing. So some of that information is like you showed the, I think there was one with like some country information that you showed.
Yes.
And I'm like, where does that information come from? Did you guys collect that all on your own, or does that come from another?
It was just me. I went to the ISO website, and you can or you can go to any place that has like that republishes ISO information. Basically, these are all standards, right? I mean, not the date stuff. I mean, that's standards too, as well inside. Basically, a large localization library. I forget the name of it, but that exists as well. But all that stuff with currencies, country, well, it's mostly just currency codes and locales. These are all ISO standards. So basically we have like a currency number, a currency code. We just have to compile it and then make one table out of it and then style it, and then you're done. You're basically using GT inside GT to like to give you information, that's useful for another aspect of it. And even give you examples of how it looks, which is kind of nice. Otherwise, we have to put it on the web page. It's nicer just to have it at hand if you know about it in the first place. That's why I recommend to go to this site if you want to learn about GT. And also, there's a wealth of information about learning GT as well from Thomas Mock, who's also at our studio. He's been publishing, like he just recently, I think yesterday or the day before last, he published like a large cookbook. It goes from easy examples to pretty advanced ones where you put in things like spark lines, little bar graphs inside table cells, pictures. Maybe I'll show it to you. Oh, I don't think I have it at hand. It's too bad. But search it up. Like look for.
We can find a link and add it to the Meetup page.
Yeah, I think it's the mockup block. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. It's in my shortcuts. But maybe it's not here. But that's okay. I thought it'd be here first.
The top one.
Is this one?
No. I'm not sure.
This is close. I mean, it's related, but it's not it. He published a cookbook. I mean, this is good stuff, obviously, but.
I think I just posted it in the chat.
Oh, excellent. Okay, good. I'm going to actually go to that right now if I can find it. Sorry. Yeah, that's the one right there. Yeah, so I'll reverse this. So yeah, it gets pretty advanced. Like it starts from simple stuff like I showed you to, just going to scroll down to the better examples here. I showed you that exact example, but it may be on the second page, maybe not, but it's on page 2. We'll go back. That'd be the advanced cookbook. Okay, and sorry, this will be worth the wait because it's pretty sweet. Yeah, right here. So spark lines inside a GT table, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah, even things like slightly interactive things like rollovers as well, like tooltips. And things like font awesome icons can go in there as well. So yeah, check these out too. This is amazing stuff. Like this might be probably the better way because it starts off pretty simple, and it just gives you it lets you know what can be done, and it gives you the code as well, and you can do your own thing based on this code. Yeah. Any more questions?
It's really helpful. Thanks for going through all this.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, this is an awesome package. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. This is cool. If you look on Twitter, you'll see tons of also NBA stuff with GT, and just a ton of sports analytics stuff too, like lots of tables being made. It's hard to find the people sharing that stuff, but if you do find it and latch onto it, you do see some cool stuff.
Tables are probably one of the hardest things to jazz up. And so I think that's really the power of your package is your ability to customize the table and then make it visually interesting. We've spent decades of just looking at tabular data in rows, and this takes it to an entirely different level. So you really should be congratulated for what you've got here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, tables have a good scannability, and sometimes plots are good for tons and tons of data, but sometimes you want to see the numbers, things like that, or a table will tell a story differently. You can add notes. It's different, basically. It could be close at times, but yeah, I still think there's lots of room for innovation in tables.
A real quick question for you. Are you seeing people, to what degree can you use your table as a pointer to other data? Because I mean, in one respect, you can say you can put in links, you can have rollovers and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
From a data mining perspective, a table is in a way, it's a slice. You're saying, I'm going to give you the slice of data, but then I'm going to give you a way to go explore other slices. Is that something that you can do as well?
Well, I think so. If you have links and you have lots of tables, you have to sort of make your own navigation scheme.
Yeah.
But you can probably link to other parts in the same page with things like anchor links.
Yeah.
So I imagine a situation where you have a bunch of tables in our Markdown document, you have some anchor links, and then you're just improving, you're just saying in your link, you have the anchor as well. So you're just going to zoom to that next table. Yeah. Or you can do things like you can have tables inside of, tab sets or other ways of arranging, content in a page, which is not vertical, but, is more or less stacked. I mean, there's tons of things you can do with, as long as you can sort of control, how you navigate to different content areas.
Yeah.
You can stick a table where you need it.
Yeah. My mind immediately went to a Shiny app where you can say, look, we're going to look at an entire league, but you're going to have selectors. You can say, I want to look at Barcelona. It's saying La Liga or something, soccer or something like that.
Yeah, and you might even just generate your table there based on certain criteria, right?
Yeah.
You may use an action button. You have certain things. You generate the table like you normally would, but you would go a few steps further. You create a GT table and then style it. And part of your server logic.
The idea of having of a table being kind of like a slice of a data really made me start thinking about what if inside your table you have like smaller graphs as part of one of the columns. You know, it's like, here's a smaller graph, and now when you click on that graph or when you click on that image or something, then it loads up or takes you over to another table. And that might be a way of like saying, okay, like your that data is now exploded into a larger table with all the points that are relevant for the graph or how that graph was created.
Yeah, I'll show you guys another thing I've been working on. It deals with GT tables. It basically uses GT tables inside a package, and it goes along the same lines. You can use a table for more than you think. So it's a package I have called point blank. So I'm going to show you an example I have. I have a bunch of examples here. And I just want to show you what it produces. Essentially, the main reporting artifact is a GT table. So I'm going to go to tests, manual tests. And the cool thing, okay, I'll just explain what this package does. It allows you to validate or check data for correctness based on your rules. So I'll go to one, which is all about right here. So we got some database, we're pulling it in, and we're just adding a bunch of rules saying these things should be correct. I won't get into specifics really because a bit low on time. But I'm going to run this. Yeah. And this will take a little while, but we'll keep talking. What it's going to do is it's going to interrogate the data. And maybe I should have chosen this simpler example, but that's okay, we can talk. So I'm going to have it run afterwards when this whole thing is done. But basically, the idea is that you can have things like, a download button in your table, because again, like each cell in a HTML table is basically can have any content you want, as long as it's web content. Just a place to put content. So yeah, so this will run for quite a few steps, but it will be an impressive artifact in the end. Let's scroll up a little bit.
What was the need that led to your developing GT in the first place?
Well, actually, there's a large Google Doc full of potential projects that people didn't take on yet. And I just saw it there. I mean, I think this was something that Hallie Wickham pointed out a long time ago, like even as far back as 2010 or 2012, like, way back. There's no grammar of tables. Like there's no easy way. I've been working on ggplot for a while. This is Hallie. He's been working on it probably for a few years at that point. Yeah. But people kept asking him, like, why isn't there something similar for tables? And he said, no, it hasn't been developed yet, but it should be similar and it should exist. But nobody, I don't want to say nobody took it on. People did.
Right.
But it was different. It wasn't declarative. It was kind of like you have your table and then you're going to style things very specifically, almost, like, you're not going to do things like, have functions which just add a title though, or just split things up and, arrange things. They didn't really have that. They did have no functions for, things which you naturally see in a table, like footnotes or source notes. And plus, there's other things too, like there's no one API for multiple outputs. So those are things we try to concentrate on because it was missing essentially, and I don't know, it was needed. Okay, so I'm gonna show you this table now. Finally, it worked out. Okay, here we go. So this is a GT table, and you can do crazy things like roll over things like with CSS to have things that pop up. Quite nice. Download buttons. You can click this and get a CSV, and all sorts of things are styled. Like we have HTML entities. We have like different fonts being used in the table. This is one of the Google fonts, I believe. Table notes. Like this is like the source note for the timing of how long it took. And, things like pictures. These are just SVG icons right there. And, we did things like, arranged, we pretty much pre-formatted the text as it came in, and then just used format markdown, and then it was done. So just wanted to sort of show you that, you do pretty cool things. You can also accurately size this so all the column widths are exactly the same. So it's very reproducible. If you squish it, it won't collapse. It'll essentially be the same width, things like that. So I just want to show you that there's potential for using GT in packages. Anywhere you need a table, you can use it.
Does the scientific community know about this yet? Because they're always publishing tables.
Yeah, but the thing is, they mostly use Word, for tables or LaTeX. And we have to get better at one of those two things to really make some impact there.
The journal publishing arena for chemistry, physics, biology, etc., is just filled with tables. Yeah. And yours is so much more readable than the standardized formats they use in their journal publications.
Yeah, I used to write journal articles myself when I was a scientist at one point. And I was in chemistry. I don't know if you are.
Same
yeah.
day.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So yeah, it was just a ton of Word. And I think once I coaxed my my advisor to do in LaTeX, because I think there's money savings for publishing at one journal.
Right.
Instead of being like, 1,400 euros is like 800 euros or something like that. It's like half the price almost. But it was the same thing. Yeah, basically you have to use their formats, and you're sort of stuck. Like it'd be great to have a publishing pipeline which used R Markdown, for instance. That'd be great. But there has to be more work there done to do things like collaborative editing. And once we get enough people, like there's a tipping point where enough people will use this stuff, it'll be the same thing as LaTeX, right? In publishing. It'll just become, it'll be used. It'll transfer over, I think. But yeah, there's got to be an effort here to do things like that, to create Word native tables, which are basically XML tables. And that's on me to get done.
Go Rich, go.
Yeah.
You have any idea how many people are using this now?
It's tough to get analytics or telematics on people. It just downloads. I think it's quite a few people. Let's have I'll show you like an insider view here. Not for people using it, but for people at least visiting the page. If you go to GT, we can go to Insights, and only people that our authors can see this. But it's pretty high. Like if you look here, 100 unique people looked at this today. And I'll show you just by point of comparison, another view, a really popular thing. If you go to Insights here, a huge amount of people look at our Markdown stuff. Like this is the most I've seen. Like it's pretty big. So we can use that as a sort of like a proxy. It's about a tenth as popular. maybe a bit less, like maybe a fifth as popular as our Markdown in terms of people going to the landing page. It's not bad. Usually that stuff scales pretty well. It's a pretty good measure.
Still pretty impressive with how new it is.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to get more people to use it. I think part of it is giving tutorials. So I've been thinking about the idea of just giving tutorials more often, because right now it's pretty limited and nobody's getting it out. So might as well just be in a tutorial, learn about GT. So I might float the idea of I have the tutorial info. I can give a 3-hour tutorial whenever. I might just do it more often instead of it just being an invite thing, like an open sort of invite, kind of like this, except longer.
I think this is probably going to go up on our YouTube channel, right, Shankar?
Okay.
Yeah, this will be on our YouTube channel, and then even on our GitHub page. I think all the links that Derek posted, I'll put it on the GitHub page too. So.
Right. That's awesome.
The package in my master's coursework with a Shiny app, and everybody was like, "What's GT?" And I'm like, "Well, I could do this," and so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm enjoying working on it. I hope to continue making it better. I mean, a lot of it is just more formats. I think that'd be the biggest payoff. So we can use it in Word, use it in LaTeX. That's right.
Yeah, I guess just to chime in, I think it's awesome. I work kind of in the business sphere, and obviously they want Word, so
yeah.
so
I mean, it's reasonable.
I've done a lot of stuff with our Markdown, and yeah, you just kind of have to speak their language, and then they get excited about it. So I'll definitely be looking into it, using it and everything. But yeah, I'm very excited to see it in Word. So,
Yeah. That's the thing I want to work on. I think it'll be actually easier for me to work on getting the Word translation done compared to RTF. RTF really was it's not great. I mean, like the documentation is really old. It's hard to find. It's
a little arcane, right?
Yeah, it's a format nobody really cares about. Only sometimes,
yeah.
Like it's good for some things, but otherwise people don't really care about it. I think Word format, like basically Open Office XML or OOXML, is kind of like the way to go.
Yeah,
and it seems easier. It's basically just XML tags. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions or comments? Well, I really want to thank you, Rich, for coming through and giving us a great presentation.
Thanks for
the
inviting me.
last example that you showed was, I think it really summed up everything.
Yeah.
When you get the colors, you get the images. I mean, the information that was in the second table was much more readable and easier for me to just like kind of skim through and say, oh, there's multiple, at least there's multiple cues for me to understand the information.
Yeah, color encoding. It's got like things arranged properly, some different letterings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what you want. Yeah, so take a look at that. Run it step by step. See how it progresses. That's kind of like the best way to sort of and play around. That's like really the best way.
All right.
All right.
So I think we don't have anything scheduled for April yet, but there is going to be there is a meeting that's scheduled for May, and I'll get the details up on the Meetup page within probably over the weekend. So.
Yeah, I'll see if I can talk to somebody for the presentation for April.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, anytime you want me back, like in the future, let me know. I'll
That would be great. Yeah.
I got stuff. Well, I got stuff.
We'll see you in April.
Thanks, Rich. This is great.
All right, no problem.
Very much.
Yeah.
Talk to everyone soon.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Derek, if I can ask